Monday morning, friends. Mark Holmes here, of course, with my buddy Cowboy Joe Booth, as well as Joe Bear in the house. And as always, I want to thank you all for watching, commenting, subscribing, and being part of the Joe Booth Report. Without you guys, as well as you ladies, you know that this literally does not work. So let's wake up the football gods here on this Monday morning. I hope everybody is doing good. My thoughts and prayers go out to my son, 500, who lost his father-in-law over the weekend, as well as Dallas Cowboys family, as well as Gary Brown's family. Gary Brown, former offensive line coach for the Cowboys at 52 years of age, had spent the last couple of weeks in a hospice going through and dealing with cancer, and definitely taken away way too soon. It's been a tragic week as far as in the football world. Losing Rayfield Wright earlier part of the week, last week, and then, of course, the Dwayne Haskins tragic loss down in Florida, where he seemed to be turning his life around and becoming a great teammate, was definitely well-loved by the Steelers. And, of course, and last night finding about Gary Brown. That's the thing you got to remember. Life is very, very precious, and you got to make the most of your time while you are here, because when your time's up, it doesn't matter who you are, how much money you have. Your time is up. So I try and do as much as I can and try and fit as much into this life that I can each and every day. So here we sit, a little over 2 weeks away from the draft, and we're working on getting everything set up for our draft party. David Wiley will be here, and he'll be cooking. Last year, you remember we had the tomahawk steak. I'm not sure. I got to work with David and see what we're going to put on the menu here, but I know my man Daniel Hernandez will be here. I know David will be here. I'm sure Clarence will be here, E2 Blue, and we'll have actually DMV on location in Vegas checking in as well. And we're working on making sure it is the best draft party that you can have. You know, we'll have our Philly Meltdown cam right here, the Cop Pizza one, as well as the Rio, so we can check on the other teams and see how they're doing here with the draft. For the Cowboys, here's the question for us. The Cowboys, what are they planning on doing? What are they planning on doing? Are they going to go ahead and do what they've done in the early part of the 2010s and decide to go through and draft on the offensive line and fix that and focus on substance as opposed to sizzle? Or would you be mad if they ended up taking a wide receiver? In my mind, you have to look at this from the standpoint of the Cowboys' hole right now is guard. They've gone through and they have addressed all of the positions. You know, we lost Randy Gregory, so they looked and said, okay, we got Dante Flower and we got Armstrong back. So we've got some people in there, you know. In the linebacking position, we didn't go out and get Bobby Wagner, but we ended up bringing back, of course, Leighton Vander Esch. You know, safety-wise, we brought back Jaron Kearse. You know, wide receiver, you lose Amari Cooper, but you get James Washington. You know, you say, okay, we got him. We've got Noah Brown there, and, of course, they signed long-term Michael Gallup. So you say they've kind of addressed, and you could still say they're not done with the wide receiver position, but clearly you have a hole there. You can look and say, well, you lost Lyle Collins, but in Lyle Collins, you have the replacement for his position in Terrence Steele. I think Terrence Steele is a better tackle at this point than Lyle Collins is. Not to say Lyle Collins isn't good, but the fact that the first 7 games, the first one he wasn't there, Lyle Collins started before he ended up getting a suspension. But through those next games, the fact that we didn't even think about Lyle Collins not being there lets you know how good he was playing. We were more focused on Connor Williams and Tyler Badish. But once he ended up having to switch to the other side and Lyle Collins came back, they weren't quite as good on that right side as they were. And so losing Lyle Collins isn't as big. as Connor Williams. Connor Williams, we've always been disappointed with, but he's still serviceable. The problem with Connor Williams, more than anything else, was he was always being flagged. 13 flags, the most on any player in the NFL. That was more of the killer than poor blocking. Some of those were deserved. Some of them were ticky-tack, where you felt like the officials had a agenda. Just did. The thing is, this is a draft that the experts will say is deep in a couple of areas. Guards, offensive linemen, defensive linemen, wide receivers. The Cowboys are more apt to say, we need a game-changing wide receiver. And, I can understand what they're looking at, saying we lost Amari Cooper. We don't know if James Washington is going to be able to pick up all that production. I get that. And you can look and say, in the second round, third round, we can go ahead and get a couple offensive linemen. However, I believe the better thing is the Cowboys have been more linked to Kenyon Green from Texas A&M, big guy. He's been there for a visit. And Boston College's Zion Johnson. Both of these guards are really good. Now, here's my philosophy, okay? You can say it's flawed or whatever. This is just my own personal opinion. I've said this many times. You're probably like, I know what he's going to say. Some positions are deemed premium positions that go off the board quickly. Always quarterbacks. And even before 24, even though this is a bad draft on quarterbacks, you'll probably still see two guys drafted before the Cowboys. You just will, because there's a lot. There's desperation, and the reality is you don't know who is going to be the good ones and who's going to be bad. There was the scramble for Carson Wentz and Michael Gallup. Other people were looking at Paxton Lynch and some of the other guys that were there. Nobody thought much about Dak Prescott. Cowboys even passed on him 3 times before they finally picked him up with a compensatory pick. And at that time, nobody thought Dak Prescott would end up having more touchdown passes in one season than any other quarterback in Cowboys history. Nobody did. Nobody thought that he would ever start a game. Nobody ever thought he would definitely get a second contract with the Cowboys. So you don't know what you don't know with the quarterback, so that's why you take a number 1 pick and try and see. Maybe we get lightning in a bottle. So those guys will be off the board. Left tackles. If you're a good left tackle, you're gone. Top 20 picks, you're gone. If you're a great edge rusher, it's going to be about 4 of those guys gone before the Cowboys draft. If you're a great wide receiver, even though it's a deep wide receiver core, the cream of the crop will be taken early. But just because you are deemed a first-round talent doesn't mean that you're going to be a first-round talented player, especially sometimes at wide receivers. Ask the Eagles about that. They took Charlie Dakota Whiteside in the second round thinking, okay, he's going to be really good. DJ Metcalf was the very next pick in the second round. Was not considered one of the top wide receivers. Yet look at him now. The Eagles took Rhaegar. The very next pick, Justin Jefferson. Saying that, hitting on the Eagles because everybody's scared about all the picks that they have. They have not done good with their top picks. That's just saying. But guard typically is not one of those positions, and I will go back through, and when I get back from, I've got to take my sister to the airport. I'm going to go back through and see how many guards have been taken over the last 10 years in the first round, and I'm betting that there isn't more than about 4 or 5. And if that's the case, you can get the very best offensive guard prospect as opposed to the 4th best wide receiver. or the fourth best offensive tackle, or the third best quarterback, or the fourth or fifth best edge rusher. You got a better chance of getting the best prospect in the position at guard than you do looking at the third or the fourth or the fifth wide receiver. So for me, if I'm the one that's doing the drafting, I'm looking at that guard first and thinking that there's really some great wide receivers in this draft. I'm looking at receiver second round. And then back to the offensive line, maybe I'm looking at center in the third, or even edge rusher. But you must plug that hole at guard. We need to get this offensive line back on track. And the only way the Cowboys originally got this offensive line on track was they found three studs: Zach Martin, Tyron Smith, and Travis Frederick. And Travis Frederick is missed more than anybody realizes, because that was one of the smartest players on the field. That guy was the field general. He could not only block his ass off, he was directing traffic, and everybody followed in line in there. And there has been a void in that offensive line ever since he's been gone. So we're going to get ready to get out of here, but I want to hear what the Cow Turd has to say. He has his hierarchy of the top 10 teams after free agency. I'm curious to see if I haven't seen this. I haven't seen it. If he actually has the Cowboys in here at all.
This is my top 10 post-free agency herd hierarchy. Here we go.
Herd hierarchy.
Time is now. Let's go.
The top 10 NFL teams according to college. Number 10.
San Francisco. Really, this is about respecting their head coach and their culture. I think Trey Lance can play. I'm not saying he's top 10. They did shore up the cornerback and safety position. They are one of 8 teams without a first-round pick. But they've got plenty of picks. It's a good roster. If Trey Lance is good, not spectacular. This is not a situation like Trevor Lawrence has to save the Jags. Jimmy Garoppolo got to a Super Bowl with this roster and this coach. I put the Niners at 10.
Number 9.
Out of respect to the Ravens organization, owner, GM, coach, and quarterback, I put them 9. They fell apart last year. I mean, good God, I looked at the list of players who got hurt last year. It was insane. They did get Marcus Williams, the number 1 free agent safety on the market, and they needed him. They didn't get to the quarterback enough last year. Their pass defense was, as Joe Burrow has emerged as a real star, they got to get better in that space. But again, like the Niners, this is out of respect for the roster, the coach, the quarterback, the GM. I just put the Niners at 10 and the Ravens at 9.
Number 8.
I think what the Raiders did in the offseason is the best offseason for the Raiders in the last 20 years. Devontae Adams, now with Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller, Josh Jacobs, and Derek Carr, that's going to be a top 5 offense. I'm not sure anybody in the league's better at quarterback, running back, tight end, slot receiver, big play receiver. Also, they went and got Chandler Jones with Max Crosby. Now, I don't love parts and elements of their defense, so I put them at 8.
Number 7.
And I put the Chargers 1 spot ahead because I like the Chargers back end. I like the Chargers offensive line much more than I do the Raiders. I think the Chargers have a great O-line. I also think Justin Herbert has a higher ceiling. They went out and got J.C. Jackson at corner, Khalil Mack to add to Bosa. So I think they have fewer questions.
I don't think the Cowboys are going to be in this list.
Offense, but fewer questions overall.
Number 6.
I mean, what do we say about the Bengals? I mean, the weakness was the offensive line, and they shored it up. Lyle Collins, Alex Kappa, the guard, Ted Karras. They went and got Hayden Hurst. Hey, listen, I know Super Bowl losers historically go backwards, but I think Joe Burrow is different. I think it's an offensive league, and Zach Taylor's a smart young head coach. I put the Bengals at 6.
Number 5.
Listen, let's slow down on the Kansas City Chiefs.
So far,
are
the
done
only
forever.
NFC team is San Francisco.
Scantling is a deep threat. Juju Smith-Schuster should be a 90-catch or 80-catch slot receiver. Justin Reed's a great safety. They still don't generate a consistent pass rush, in my opinion. But the offensive line, which they threw together last year, will be in year 2. I got Mahomes. I got Andy Reid. I got playmakers. I'm good. Chiefs at 5.
Number 4.
Well, let's give the Denver Broncos. I've said I think they're going to win the division. I think beyond Russell Wilson, the acquisition of Randy Gregory and DJ Jones,
Rams
along with
has
Bradley
to be in
Chubb
here
the
somewhere, and I'm
defensive
sure
front,
Tampa Bay.
Staggering. This is going to be a great defensive front. Interior, on the edge, and now I get Cortland Sutton and Tim Patrick and Javonte Williams, the running back, and Jerry Jeudy. And now we have the catalyst for it, a quarterback. When you watch this team lose the last couple of years, it was always like they couldn't win by track meet. I mean, they had to win a certain way. Now we got an offensive coach, a superstar quarterback, got the Broncos at 4.
Number 3.
Tampa Bay. I don't know if Gronk's going to play.
Okay,
he may
so we
come
got
in late.
2.
But I will say this. They lost both their guards and went and got Shaq Mason, so they solved their issue. I think they'll draft a running back. Lenny Fournette's going to come back. I think you have to give respect. I don't know. Todd Bowles would not have been my hire. I probably would have gone with Byron Leftwich because of the way the league is moving. I put them at 3, and number 2 being...
Number 2.
The Rams beat them twice last year and, frankly, blew them out in L.A. and blew them out for the first half in the Super Bowl. And if not for a Cam Akers fumble, they would have run away with that thing. Rams are better, and they added Allen Robinson, a wildly underrated wide receiver, and Bobby Wagner, who's going to be a first-ballot Hall of Famer, arguably first or second-best Mike linebacker in the league. Their offensive line, they need to go draft this draft. They got to go war like the Cowboys. They're getting a little long in the tooth. They're going to get a little expensive.
They don't have
right
a draft
tackle,
pick till the 5th
but
round.
I put them at number 2.
Number 1.
I thought Buffalo was the best team in football at their best last year. I still thought they had Kansas City beaten, and they've added Von Miller and O.J. Howard and Shaq Lawson and Jamison Crowder, and they just keep getting better and better. Josh Allen was sensational in the playoffs. So the best team does not always win the Super Bowl. It is attrition and health and momentum and where are you playing. You know, they don't lose to the Jags. They don't lose to the Steelers early. You know, maybe they're playing, they're running through Buffalo. The Super Bowl's running through Buffalo. But in the end, I think this is the best team in football.
You know, the thing that's always funny to me, and this will be the narrative that goes through, with the exception of the Cowboys, is typically when you look at, a poll like this, post the season and going into the next season. Let me see if I can come back and get the exact on the screen where his list was. Typically what they do is they don't really do their homework. They basically go through with the teams that were good last year, they're going to be good this year. And not realizing that teams that are good this year, that half of them won't make the playoffs the next year. Hence, everybody in the NFC East, it's always a different team that ends up winning the division. It just is. Hence, Washington won it the year before. Washington wasn't in the playoffs, but everybody thought Washington, oh, man, now, of course, Washington's going to have a second year with Chase Young, and they're going to be great and everything else, and best defense in football, and they dropped off a cliff. So as we look at this, as they say, the Raiders did all kinds of great work and stuff. They made the playoffs last year. Well, they got a new coach. It wouldn't surprise me to see the Raiders take a step back. It wouldn't surprise me to see, even though the Chargers did get a whole lot of new pieces in there, it takes time for all those new pieces to work out. And sometimes a team of all-stars or dream teams don't necessarily get better. I wouldn't surprise me on that one. It wouldn't surprise me if the Bengals, after, coming out of nowhere, now having that first-place schedule and the story being out that they're a good team, that they don't take a step back. In San Francisco, you've got still an unproven second quarterback as opposed to Jimmy Garoppolo, maybe a guy who gets traded when his shoulder heals. So I could look at those teams and say they could possibly take a step back. And even with Tampa Bay, Bruce Arians retiring, Tom Brady coming back, at some point Tom Brady is going to hit the wall. And it's looking like Gronk might not be back, his security blanket. So we're looking at this hierarchy list that he has, and you notice that pretty much almost everybody in there was a playoff team with the exception of Baltimore and Denver. You're looking at some of these teams that won't be there. But who knows? I'm just a guy with a day job and a voodoo doll who's got to get his sister to the airport. And you know how we roll. Hope you guys tune in tonight for our live stream, 9 o'clock Eastern.
Commenting, subscribing, and being part of the Joe Boo Sports Report.